for me as like a pass holder is to see something and go, oh, that's so cool. Like, I can't wait. And the journalist in me is like, wait, let me make sure that that's actually what's happening. Let me make some calls. Let me check around and make sure that's actually happening. And then I can post it, because I try not to just run with things or over exaggerate or embellish. I have to like get things right. So that's that journalist part where it's like, that's the challenging part because, a lot of people are sharing things about what's going on in the parks and you see a picture and you think, oh, that's what it is. And you got to check to make sure it is what it is before you go with it. So there's like restraint. You got to make sure things are correct.
That is digital journalist Ashley Carter, who's here to talk about so many upcoming attractions in Orlando and beyond. You're listening to the Tomorrow Society podcast. Thanks for joining me here on the Tomorrow Society podcast, episode 138. I am your host, Dan Heaton. I'm recording this as cast members and their guests are having fun at Disneyland. As I speak, I'm seeing all of it. It's an exciting time, and I think that excitement is building in the theme park community, just with not only Disneyland opening, but Universal Hollywood and Knott's Berry Farm and so much more, and a lot of really exciting attractions that are on the way. Now, I'm still a little nervous, even just with the pandemic continuing. A lot of us have been vaccinated, hopefully more soon, but it's okay for us to also be excited about experiencing some really cool new stuff. And that's why I thought it was a perfect time to talk with my guest today, Ashley Carter. She's a digital journalist who works at Spectrum News 13 in Orlando. She writes a lot of content on the web for them. I've been following her work for a long time. What I really appreciate about what Ashley does is that you can tell she's a big fan. She's in the parks all the time. Follow her on social media. But also, too, that she does a good job presenting the news. And I know she mentioned that in her original clip. And just the idea of there's a lot to sift through when you're talking about theme parks and new openings, Disney and Universal. They're ready to battle again. So to have somebody who can just be a reliable source, have fun with it, but also just give what we need to know. I think Ashley does a great job about that, and I had a lot of fun talking with her. We go through a lot of what's going to be on the way in theme parks, VelociCoaster, Avengers Campus. We talk about Nintendo, Epic Universe, Ratatouille, plus Iron Gwazi and Icebreaker and other things going on in Orlando. So many things that I don't think I've even mentioned a lot of the things that we talk about. Ashley also gives some more info about her background at the Disney College program and how she ended up becoming a journalist who works in Orlando and what that job is like. It was super fun, and I can't wait for you to hear this show. And I hope that sometime soon I'm able to get on some of these attractions that we talk about on this episode. Before we get to Ashley, I did want to mention that I was a guest on the Beyond the Mouse podcast, which was a lot of fun. And we talked all about the Disney movie Tomorrowland from 2015 starring George Clooney. I am a big fan of that movie, which was directed by Brad Bird, but I know it didn't do well at the box office. Critics were mixed on it at best. And we have a really good discussion because, they have 3 hosts. And I will say that not all of them loved it, but I think that made it fun, where we spend more than an hour just talking about the acting and the set design and how it connects to Disney and the message and how we respond to that. And it was really fun to record. You should definitely check it out. Beyond the Mouse has had a lot of cool guests. They've talked to some of the greats like Raleigh Crump and Bob Gurr, but they've also talked to some actors. Like they had Billy Campbell from The Rocketeer and the 4400 or Evangeline Lilly. And I'm kind of looking at them going, wow, that's really cool that they got to talk to such talented people. So you should check out this episode with me, of course, but also their show in general. And I really appreciate that they asked me to be on the show. And I can go on about Tomorrowland for a really long time, so it was a lot of fun. So let's do this. There's a lot for Ashley and I to cover, so I want to get right to it. Let's go talk about a bunch of fun theme park news and exciting attractions. Here is Ashley Carter. I want to start with what I think is one of the biggest things coming right now that's on the docket, of course, is the VelociCoaster coming to Islands of Adventure. We've known about it forever, even before we had a name, but we finally have the opening date, which was June 10th. And I just love to know for you, I mean, what kind of interests you about this, and just what do you think it might be, how it would go for Universal?
First off, I love roller coasters. Like, I just love roller coasters. So if it's a roller coaster, I'm already going to be excited about it. And the thing about, VelociCoaster, like you said, we've known about it for a while, even before they acknowledged it. So I think for me, it's kind of like, finally it's here. I've been following it since construction, since permits were filed. And now suddenly, like, we have a date, we have a name, we know when it's opening. You can see it. I go to the parks pretty regularly. And so the last few times I've been to Universal, I always walk by the ride and see it running. It's testing, the lights are up. So I'm very excited.
I really think it's cool that, it's going to have thrills. Like, I'm a little intimidated by it, but it's also going to have a few show scenes. And I think coming off Hagrid's, which had, just so much of that. Do you think this could be, I know Universal has like Hulk and Rip Ride Rocket, which were, have very, even with Hulk, not big stories. Do you think we're going to see more of Universal kind of heading in this direction where they're trying to mix more the theme of it, not just the thrills?
I think so. I think, especially you mentioned Hagrid's, it was a show coaster, a story coaster, right? And I think they're doing something similar with VelociCoaster. And I think it's part of it is to, really create this immersive interactive experience on a coaster. So you get more than just thrills. You also get to see raptors and feel like you're actually in, some part of the movie, because obviously it's based on a very popular franchise. And so I think that is kind of the direction that they're going with this, and probably with other attractions in the future.
We've seen it in the past with like the Mummy and others where they kind of mix that in. But this one, to me, at first, you look at the track and you think, this is more like, because Orlando has a lot of great themed coasters, but they're kind of taking a shot at more of a thrilling coaster going over 70 miles an hour and all of that. I think it's going to be great for just that park in general. And they've done a lot of great things with Harry Potter and Kong. But how much of an impact do you think this is going to have going into the summer for Universal to have such a big coaster? Is it going to draw, within reasons with capacity, is it going to draw big crowds, do you think, to Universal?
Oh, I think so, definitely. Again, kind of watching what's been happening with the parks, since they closed and then reopened, during the pandemic, it's, even on weekends and holidays, Universal has been, reaching capacity, the limited capacity, but reaching the capacity. So now you throw in a brand new ride, especially if people are coming down, people are getting vaccinated, people are feeling a little bit more comfortable about traveling. They're going to be coming to Florida, and what's there to do in Florida? Theme parks. So you add that in where people have literally not had a lot to do for nearly a year or more. And now suddenly you have a brand new ride. Like, of course, people are going to be like, I can't wait to go. This is what I'm looking forward to. So yeah, I definitely think, once VelociCoaster opens, it's going to bring the locals and it's going to bring, tourists to Universal.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I think personally about it where, I'm looking at seeing these things open and haven't traveled in 14 months or so, and just looking at it going like, wow, I'm ready to go ride anything, but especially something new, and to have it be just so impressive. That seems like that whole area, which, I like the Jurassic Park boat ride there and everything, and I think there's some nice theming, but that park is just so dominated by some of the other areas. I think that's going to really possibly take some of the pressure off some other parts of the resort, because everybody's going to kind of head to that area that maybe is, I mean, it's not Toon Lagoon, but it's still not getting as much crowd interest, I think, as other parts might get.
Oh, yeah. I definitely think it'll help alleviate some of the, some of the crowds that have been going over there to Hagrid's, right? Because that's the newest coaster, and it's a very popular coaster. And it's in that area of, the Wizarding World it can get congested at times. So now you have this other attraction that can kind of pull people away from there. It's like, okay, you can't get onto Hagrid's, let's try VelociCoaster or vice versa.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really good because, I haven't been there, and actually this is sad to admit, I haven't ridden Hagrid's yet, which I know I've heard amazing things.
It's amazing.
But, oh gosh.
It's one of my favorite coasters in Orlando. It's just amazing. It's so good.
I love that they've been able, that they've found a way to make something thrilling, but also, I mean, Dueling Dragons and Dragon Challenge were really great, but to have that area with so many like physical scenes is, even though I'm sure a lot of times you're just flying right past them, it's still cool to have it. I think it's really exciting. That's what I like to see what they're doing there. Well, this is completely different. They have another opening that was big in terms of from afar for a lot of us, but Super Nintendo World, Universal also have, of course, opening in Japan in March, and they're already building it in Hollywood, and I suspect we're going to see it in Orlando with Epic Universe. I mean, from what you've seen so far, I mean, do you think this is going to be as big of a game changer, especially in the U.S. parks, as I think it's going to be?
Well, it has a huge fan base, already. And I think, based on what I've seen from the opening, people's excitement, I definitely think it'll be a game changer. It all depends on how it's presented, I think. As long as, I think, if, Super Nintendo World, we know what's coming to Orlando. And, if it is part of this Epic Universe theme park, that's going to be huge. They're going to have so much space. It can be, different than the one in Japan. Obviously, they can add more elements to it. So, yeah, I think that will make the difference. It's like how, big is it going to be here? What the attractions will be. Looking at it, I can't wait until I can go to Japan to do this. I'm not even a huge Super Mario fan. I played, Mario video games when I was a kid, but even I want to go and hit the blocks and collect coins and things like that. It just looks really, really cool, and I imagine people here in the States want to experience that as well.
I think so. Yeah. And that's the thing for me, that you've seen where the rides, it's hard to tell online, especially they have the Mario Kart where I watch online and it's augmented reality and it's kind of like you can't totally get the gist of it. But just walking around that land and seeing you have, your, I don't know, I don't forget the name, the wristband thing that they'll get
you. Oh, yeah, like the power-up bands. I think they're called like power-up bands or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, too, because, we've seen it with Harry Potter. When Harry Potter started out in Orlando, and then it went to California, they had limited space, so it kind of was a smaller version, and same with Japan. And then I suspect Super Nintendo, I know they, that park in Hollywood is kind of limited with space, but it would be cool to see them kind of do the reverse, where instead of having the really big area first, and then other way, go to Florida, and with hopefully more space, they can do more, because it seems like there's, with the formula they've created, there's a lot of different types of attractions they could do.
Oh yeah.
I would love to see it.
There's so much they can pull from. Obviously I think most people are going to want to have the Mario Kart attraction. That's what I want. But then, there's also so many other, properties that they can pull from, within Nintendo, to do an attraction on. They don't have to necessarily all be, mirrors of each other. They can have, similarities, but I think it would be a great opportunity to provide something different, because that will help generate excitement, right? It's like, oh yeah, I could go to, California for that, but if I'm here in Orlando, like I can ride all these different rides, that you can't do anywhere else.
Yeah, totally. And just speaking of Epic Universe, I was nervous that with the pandemic, that they were going to say, okay, we're not doing as well financially. We're just going to shelve it for a lot longer. Like we're just going to say, maybe we won't do it at all, or maybe we'll push it back to 2030 or something crazy. Because I was excited because, really, we haven't had, since the late 90s, if you just look at Disney and Universal, if you don't count Volcano Bay, which they like to count as a theme park, but I'm just saying, we haven't had a big park since that stretch with Animal Kingdom and Islands Adventure opening. And so for me to see an entirely new park from one of them in Florida, I was so pumped. But I was really relieved when they announced they were going to resume construction. I know it's going to be a bit later. You cover the Orlando area a lot. I'm curious just for Orlando. How big of a deal is it that they're restarting it so early too, not waiting until like the pandemic is completely gone?
I think it's huge. Like you said, a lot of people were really excited about this park when they first announced it, right? It's the first new park in a very long time. You're talking construction, jobs, an economic boost to the area, like all that's very exciting. And then when they paused it, everybody was like, oh no, what does this mean? But I think one of the things that was mentioned when, Universal Comcast was doing their earnings calls is that they said they paused it because there was a lot of uncertainty. And I think, they always wanted to keep doing it. I think they just were kind of looking at the landscape and going, is this feasible right now? And then once they realized that, there was pent up demand for it, and then probably looking long term at the timeline, they're like, well, if we are able to restart this within a year, what will this look like 3 years from now? Because obviously, think most people weren't thinking the pandemic was going to last forever. So we're looking at now we're in it, but in a few years, where will we be? And in a few years, people are going to want to go places, just like they were before. So, I'm very excited about it. I can't wait for them to announce more things. Like, obviously, it's not going to just have, one land. It's going to have many, and, a hotel and shops and restaurants and things like that. So, I think most people are very excited about the prospect of a new theme park.
Oh, yeah. I think it could really make a difference, too, just in terms of, like, I think of it in, Disney has 4 parks and Universal has 2, and they both have so many cool things. But, more, if they had a third park plus all the new hotels they've been adding and a new hotel possibly in the park, it could be a really big deal. Well, you mentioned it, too, that they released that early concept art, which everyone was analyzing like it was, the Zapruder film or something, just really looking in on it. But we really know that things could change a lot by that point. We've heard it possibly could be Harry Potter again, which was likely, Nintendo, maybe How to Train Your Dragon, maybe classic monsters. I'm not asking you to predict with a crystal ball, but I'm curious, what would you want to see at this? Like, what would excite you to have at a park like this, which is kind of a blank slate in a way?
Definitely Super Nintendo World.
Yes.
I definitely want to see that. In terms of the things that people were speculating, like, I think it would be a great idea to have How to Train Your Dragon. I know it's a property that's not really as popular as it once was, right? Because they're not making movies and stuff anymore. But I think the potential of, the types of attractions they could have with it, simulate people flying on the backs of dragons, which would not be too, dissimilar from, a certain Pandora avatar.
I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about?
But, I think that would be really cool. And, who knows? I don't think any franchise is really ever over, right? There's so many reboots and remakes. So even if they did land on something like How to Train Your Dragon, they could obviously do TV shows and movies and revitalize that. So I would like to see that. In terms of other things, I haven't really thought about what else I would like to see. It's hard. I'm drawing a blank in terms of other like Universal properties or something. Universal Monsters, I think, would be cool if they had that, though. They already have a Mummy ride, but even if they did like something, because, Universal does really well with like Halloween Horror Nights and things. So if they created this land that's like really creepy and, kind of deserted looking, I think that would, just the theming, I'm thinking attractions, just the theming of that land would be really, really cool.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm nervous that one, because of, they tried to make like the Mummy with, or the Tom Cruise movie that
it was
failed
awful.
spectacularly and everything. So I'm a little nervous that because those haven't really hit, like, for example, like Kong, now with how things are going with that and Godzilla and everything, that's like a no-brainer that they had the Kong right there. But some of the other things, it's like they need to have some sort of resurgence. But based on what you're saying, though, I just think about, I love the Mummy in Florida. I love the whole way that Kong looks on the outside and that queue and everything. And I think, if they can make it atmospheric, especially because if you compare it to Nintendo and to Harry Potter to an extent, but even How to Train a Dragon, they're a little more like brighter and, lively and fun. And you have this other area over there, which is a little scary. That'd be okay. Not like frightening. Already, it's not a case where, I don't mean to stereotype, but I'm just saying younger kids as much. Don't go to Universal as much maybe as Disney. So, it's nice they can have something that's a little more like they've done with Halloween Horror Nights, like you mentioned, for teenagers, young adults, and beyond. So I think it's cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I guess we got to talk about Disney too. They have a few things coming up too, which is usually what I talk about, but I love talking about Universal. But I do want to mention, it is interesting. We talked about the VelociCoaster, which Universal came out and said, June 10th, this is our date. And very soon after that, Disney was like, you know what? We're going to have the Avengers Campus, and that's going to come out in June too. And granted, part of that was Disneyland also finally being able to reopen in April. So it's not totally related, but I'm interested. I know it's in California. It's not in where you're usually covering.
Yeah.
But how interested are you just in seeing this entire new land of Avengers Campus coming to California so soon? Because I thought, kind of like they did with Ratatouille, I thought they might be like, oh, we'll just wait till December and let's get everything kind of going with the park first. I'm surprised it's so soon.
They originally were planning to open it last July, right? And so, it was ready. It's, done. I think they were just itching to open it. I think because Disneyland isn't celebrating an anniversary, it didn't really make sense for them to wait. Especially, again, Disneyland has been closed longer than Disney World. So you're coming into the summer, you're reopening, you're coming into summer. You probably want to get as many people back as you possibly can to make up for the fact that you've been closed for so long. So what's a big draw? Avengers, Marvel. Like, I think that's probably what they were thinking. Like, yeah, it's ready. Let's open it. Like, let's give the people what they want. And I'm kind of jealous because I love Marvel and I love Avengers. And I'm like looking at all the concept art, and the Spider-Man attraction looks really cool. And I'm just like, man, I want to go to California.
Oh, I'm there too. Yeah, I was supposed to go to California before it opened last year. But then I was like, well, it's good, then when I go, we'll get to see Avengers. Of course, I didn't know at the time that things would be closed for so long, but I'm still really excited. It's really interesting. We talked about Universal. I love Universal's Spider-Man attraction so much. It's one of my favorite attractions of all time. It's going to be strange in a way. I know why, because of rights and everything, but to have a Spider-Man attraction in DCA from Disney and then one very different attraction at Islands of Adventure, how challenging is it going to be? Can Disney come close to matching what Universal has with Spider-Man with this new attraction?
Well, I wonder if they're even worried about that. I think if it would never happen, but like if Disney had a Spider-Man attraction here in Orlando and Universal had one as well, then I think there'd be easier to compare the two, like which one's going to be better. But I think because, one's already on the other coast, unless people are just traveling to both coasts to do both rides, I don't really know if people will really care. But I think it looks different enough, because obviously you're going to be with the, Disney California Adventure one. You'll be shooting web shooters and things, and you're wearing, you're going to be seeing Spider-Man, and it's going to be a little different. And also it's going to be a more modern Spider-Man, right? Because the Universal one is very much stuck in the 90s version of the Marvel characters. So yeah, I think it's gonna be different enough. And Tom Holland's reprising his role, so he's so I think kids and younger audiences and audiences that have been introduced to Spider-Man with the MCU, they're gonna be more familiar with that one. And I think it'll have a nice separation. I don't think it'll be too similar.
Yeah, and also it's a big deal too because it's in the States at least, we had Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, but that was a redo of Tower of Terror.
Mm-hmm.
So to have a new Marvel ride in the United States, I know we're going to have Cosmic Rewind coming up,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a big deal because they've had some in overseas like Iron Man, and then there's an Ant-Man and the Wasp. But I think it's pretty cool to have something with the MCU and more about that.
Yeah.
And I mean, given just how popular, and there's also a new Spider-Man movie coming out, I think at the end of this year, assuming that sticks.
Yeah.
And so it's good timing, I will say.
Yeah.
So in general, though, I think it's gonna be great. But I wanted to ask you. I mentioned Ratatouille, the other big opening, and I know they moved it back because that's another thing where I had heard rumors it was going to open in I mean, we didn't really know, but we thought maybe February, March, April, something like that, or the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's October, which makes sense with the 50th. How excited are you for this, to have this new Ratatouille, new to Florida Ratatouille ride?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I've not had the chance to go to Disneyland Paris yet. It's on my list. I really want to visit all the Disney theme parks, like outside of the United States. But I haven't been able to visit Disneyland Paris yet. So, I am aware of the Ratatouille ride. I have not had a chance to ride it, but I did get to do a preview of it, the one here. I got to do a walkthrough tour. And it was nice. They only showed us like a couple of scenes in the attraction. It was still under construction at the time. But we got to walk in through part of the kitchen area. And so you have these larger than life, pieces of food and refrigerators and things, and it's so huge. You feel really small. You feel like you're the size of a rat. So just seeing that alone, I was like, oh, I can't wait to like actually be in this attraction, like spinning around and weaving through. So I'm very excited, and I've been waiting for them to make an announcement, because obviously it's like, forget when they first announced it, but people have been waiting for it. And it's a new attraction for Epcot. It's a new attraction for the World Showcase. And, they have that whole area expansion now for the France Pavilion that you can kind of walk through. And it looks really cool over there. I mean, they have it blocked off to the area that's, where Ratatouille entrance is. You can't go over there yet. But the other part that they did open up, it looks really nice. It looks really cool. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I've been to Paris, but it was before they added it. It was, 2006, I think. So, and that park really needed it. So I'm glad that they did. But I'm excited just because I feel like it does fit well in the France Pavilion at Epcot, where sometimes you wonder when they're going to add a lot of movies to that,
Mm-hmm.
how it's going to work. But I think if anything fits in any country, it is Remy or Ratatouille there. So, it's interesting to me, too, though, with the 50th anniversary, because I know if we hadn't had the pandemic, I'm sure they would have really brought out all the stops. And now, so far, we've heard, there's the lighting packages. They're working kind of as we go on updates to the Jungle Cruise, and then some other small changes. I mean, what are your expectations as somebody who kind of covers it for the 50th? I mean, do you think there's things we don't know about, or is it going to be... Because it's hard for me to picture, even though I know they're probably going to expand capacity by then, it being as big of a thing just because of the state of the world, I guess.
Yeah, well, I definitely think there's still things that we have not been told. I still think there are things that surprises along the way, simply because, their anniversary celebration is going to last 18 months.
Yes.
I think that's a key there. It's like, I think they're taking into account that, the pandemic happened. And so they had to probably make some adjustments and scale back some things and then plan for, to bring that back maybe later. So to have an 18-month long celebration, they can obviously include other things that may have been delayed as part of that celebration, because it's going to be for so long. So I think there's definitely things that they can include that will be part of that celebration.
Great. Yeah. And that's, I feel like there's things you may know that you can't tell me. I'm sensing something between the lines here, but I'm not going to press on that at all
I don't
because
know
that's
anything. I know what you guys know. I don't.
I know very little, but I will say I think you raise a good point because of course they've already announced just things they've already announced. We have that, Tron obviously being built at the Magic Kingdom and Guardians of the Galaxy, which I'm wondering about that one though because they still have to shoot the scenes for it, which I think they're going to do along with Guardians 3. But just with those two in general, I'm curious what you think about them and how much of an impact you think they're going to have. Because I suspect both will open. I mean, I think Tron will open during the 50th anniversary and Guardians probably will, especially given the 18 months is, that's way out there. But how big could these be, I guess, for Disney?
I think any new attraction for Disney is big.
Yes.
I mean, from what I've seen in the few years that I've been covering the parks, anytime Disney opens a new ride, there's lines, there's just excitement and interest because I think, for a lot of people, if it's the locals who go all the time, there's something new to try, right? And if it's people who haven't been in a couple years, like that's the thing to try because you might not be back for another year or so. So you want to do the new attraction, whether it's like Frozen or something like that. That's what it is. So I think also too, Guardians is going to be a coaster. I definitely think Disney needs to have more thrill rides. I mean, they have tons of rides that, are family friendly and, dark rides and things that kids can go on. And that's great. But I do think they should have a lot more, thrilling rides. And I think, Guardians will be good for that. Tron as well, right? They're both coasters. And I think Disney needs more of that too. So yeah, I definitely think both of these attractions are going to be big for Disney. I'm excited for both of them. Again, I like coasters. So anytime there's a coaster, I'm like, yes, let's go. Let's do it. I'm ready. Let's go. So I'm excited. Yeah. And I think it'll be big for Disney.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Tron, just from what I've seen I have not been to Shanghai, but it looks incredible.
Yeah.
It's going to be so interesting too with having Tron and Space Mountain in like a similar area over there. And then, I mean, it's just, I feel like, and even a little bit with Guardians and Ratatouille, the parks, the way people kind of move through the parks, especially the Magic Kingdom, is going to be so different. Already Tomorrowland is very popular and a lot of people go there. But now I'm just wondering how much of an impact that's going to have. I mean, Epcot, I think it's going to be Soarin' and Test Track and others won't have as big a lines, but it just seems like it's going to change how so many of us have learned how to tour the parks, basically.
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely going to change how, people move around the parks. I think Epcot will benefit the most because like you said, Epcot pretty much has with, Spaceship Earth is at the front and then you basically have Test Track on one side and Soarin' on the other, as far as big attractions. And then, Frozen's there in the World Showcase. So now you'll have, Frozen and then Ratatouille in the World Showcase. So, and they're on opposite sides of the World Showcase. So that'll help kind of disperse people throughout the World Showcase. And then you'll have Guardians will open. So it'll pull people, I think, in different directions in the parks. Not everybody will be going to one specific area and be congested over in that area. They can kind of be all over Epcot. You know what I mean? And I think that'll help. It's trickier, I think, with Magic Kingdom because, like you said, Tomorrowland is already, the location for so many attractions that people tend to go to. So I think that area will be very busy, as opposed to other parts of the park.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy just walking over and just getting on Pirates and be like, nobody's over here. This is great. Or something. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it probably won't be that way, but it's weird because you have Big Thunder and Splash on one end and then the other end. And it's like in the middle, it's, it's different, but it's going to be, I totally agree with you about Epcot because Frozen to me, especially when that opened, that area would get so congested. And I know now, especially with social distancing and the lines, sometimes it's like people are lined up back to China.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, I think it's really going to help in a lot of ways, just beyond just having to cool attractions
Yeah.
getting added in the next few years. Well, I have another question about something else Disney is doing for you. So, you mentioned you got to go to the preview of Ratatouille. Are you going to get special access and just like get to go stay in the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel? Are you going to get a free night? Is that going to happen soon? Or how's that going to go?
Look, I have no idea. That I don't know. But I would love to be able to go in there and look around. Definitely. I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I've been following the hotel, construction permits and looking at every document I possibly can about the hotel. And I'm really curious about the whole, cruise-like experience. I mean, you're going to be completely, immersed in Star Wars, and it's going to be, an adventure, as they say. Do I know if I'm going to get a preview? I don't know. I don't know if they're going to let me in, but I would love to be able to walk through there, because I just want to see. I just want to get a sense of the scale too. Like, how big are these, rooms and the area, and how does it feel to be just basically shielded from the outside world and live in a Star Wars world? That's kind of where I want to, put my head in that space.
Yeah, the room concept art makes it look so tiny. Like, I look at it,
but that's like a cruise ship, right?
Yeah, it is. That's why I don't really love sitting in the cruise ships either. I'm not like a big cruise person, but I just think it is like that. And I'm really, like you mentioned, I'm really curious about the gameplay and all of that, because I feel like you can promise a lot, but it's to actually execute that. And, because a lot of times, I mean, this is more about regular lands. When new lands open, it's like all these, with Galaxy's Edge, it's like the bounty hunter is going to find you at Oga's and tell you that, and that, I mean, I didn't really expect that to happen, but that's a little different, because that's like Pandora, everybody's going to speak Na'vi and all that, and that didn't really, thankfully didn't happen. But I wonder with the hotel, because they're paying so much, and you're not having it's just part of the theme park. I mean, can this game really work? Can they really make it? Because this is on the level of like immersive theater, but those are usually very small groups, and you have events of a few nights. This is like an ongoing thing that people are going to pay a lot of money for.
Yeah, I think it would be if they could pull it off, right? I think it could happen within the hotel more so than the land, obviously. Because I mean, when you're announcing this stuff, we're going to have a Star Wars themed land, and you'll be able to walk there, you get really excited, and then the practical aspects of it, it's like, that's not going to really make sense, because obviously you're going to have thousands of people moving through that land, and they're going to want to ride attractions, and the logistics doesn't quite work. But with the hotel, I mean, there's going to be only a limited number of rooms, people, they're going to be blocked off into 2-day experiences. So I think they could do it. I mean, you're going to have there's going to be all these different, it's a 2-day experience. It's going to be a limited number of people. And, there's going to be different things like, Jedi lightsaber training, and you get to take tours of the ship, and there's all these other different aspects. I think they could pull off having a, completely sort of quote unquote immersive experience for that. A better one than you would in the parks, where it just so much is unpredictable in terms of how people are moving around and things that are going on,
Totally. And I think that's the way they have to do it. That's why they have to limit it to so few rooms. But are they going to get to use that lightsaber that Josh D'Amaro showed? Are they going to do that? Is that the question?
That would be really great if that's what it's for. It was really cool to see it happen. People, that's the thing. I was watching the virtual conference, I was watching it, and after everything that happened, and I write up my story and do everything, the only thing people kept asking me about was like, okay, well, so tell me about this lightsaber. And I'm like, I don't know.
They didn't even need to do the first 30 minutes.
Yeah. That's all they cared about. It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean real lightsaber? Explain. I'm like, it looked like a real lightsaber.
There's it's not an effect. It's a practical thing. That's what he had to clarify that. I guess.
Yeah. But it was really cool. I mean, Disney did it so perfectly, because it was at the very end of the virtual, press event, and it happened so quick, and it was just, he's standing there, and then he whips out the lightsaber, and it goes, like the light comes up and it didn't look like there was any plastic or anything already there. So, it didn't look like the lightsabers you would get in the parks or anything. And then it was just, it's real. And the video ended and you're like, oh my goodness, did I just see what I thought I saw? Is that happening? And, the rest is history. But yeah, it looks really cool. I hope that is something that they do get to either include with the hotel or maybe add some kind of interactive experience within Galaxy's Edge that people can use it. I would love to be able to buy one. I don't think I could afford it, but I would love to be able to buy one. But I hope that people are able to use it or, have, access to it in some capacity in some way.
Yeah, it's a fun thing, and I agree that if they try to sell it, given how much it costs to do, they just raise the price for the lightsaber experience. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to afford it, but I'll watch it from afar. I think it's cool. Yeah. Well, I don't want to totally sleep on other things going on in Orlando, and partially because of the pandemic, we have multiple major roller coasters being opened at other parks, Icebreaker at SeaWorld, and of course Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, who have a lot of great coasters. So how are we sleeping on these? Are these going to be, maybe not on the VelociCoaster level, but just like really cool additions, especially for you as a coaster fan? Are you excited about these?
Yeah, I'm very excited about Iron Gwazi. But it's interesting. I think, before the pandemic happened and before, Universal was announcing anything about VelociCoaster, everybody was really excited about Iron Gwazi. Like, it had so much momentum in terms of on social media that people were all talking about it. They were asking for POV footage. Everybody wanted an update about Iron Gwazi. And I think then the pandemic happened, and then Universal was like, okay, we're going, all in on VelociCoaster. And I think people kind of not stopped caring, but their attention was diverted. So, I think once VelociCoaster opens, I don't know when Universal, I don't know when Busch Gardens is going to announce Iron Gwazi opening. I don't know when SeaWorld's going to do that. Hopefully they open this year. It says anticipated opening 2021 now on the websites. But we'll see. But I think, if they open maybe after VelociCoaster or maybe announce something, I think that excitement will come back. I think people are just, in general, excited about coasters and anything new. I know I am. So I think, whether or not they open soon or later, I think people will still be excited about it. I think people just want new things, and so it's like, okay, yeah, we're going to get VelociCoaster. And then, you get the Iron Gwazi date. And you're like, okay, and then we'll get to do Iron Gwazi. And then we'll get to do Icebreaker. I think just people are really excited about new attractions. And I don't think SeaWorld or Busch Gardens will have any trouble, getting people interested about those rides.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. Because I think about it. It's just when you've had something you kind of, I don't know, take for granted, but that you're able to go do. It's like, oh, I'll go to SeaWorld or Busch Gardens down the road. And then you don't get to do anything. And you're like, wow, everything sounds amazing, right?
Right. You're like, I'll drive down I-4.
Hit one after the next. Like, okay, I'll come back home in 3 weeks or something. But yeah it's exciting. Peppa Pig. Come on. There's just so much happening right now.
Yeah. Not even kids, but it's like, yeah, sure. I'm Peppa Pig Park. Let's
Mine are too old for Peppa Pig already. We missed the window, I think. But I don't know, the average age is very young. But staying focused here, I could just veer off there. But just in general, you mentioned it that with the pandemic, how much of an impact it's had. Your job has involved, visiting parks and getting news and doing all that and writing and creating things digitally. So for you, how much of an adjustment, first, of course, when things close, but even when things reopen for you to cover the parks during a pandemic, what's that like?
Yeah, it was an adjustment. You go from, pretty much every week there's an announcement, there's some press release, there's something going on at the parks to nothing, no announcements. You can't go visit, if anything's changing in the parks, you can't see it. To then there was that period, like right before the parks opened, they were having meetings, government meetings, reopening plans were being submitted and things like that. And so it was like covering that was different because it's like suddenly, every day you're listening into these meetings about, dates that they're throwing around, health and safety measures that they're going to implement, which is like, okay, how's that going to work? And, what's that going to look like when the parks, reopen? And then to actually go to the park when it had reopened in the middle of a pandemic, I think was an adjustment too. I think my biggest concern, I don't know about anybody else, but my biggest concern wasn't so much, what measures are Disney, Universal, SeaWorld going to put into place. It was more like compliance, right? Because, you can have all types of rules in place, but will people follow them? And I wasn't really worried about, will Disney have the correct safety measures? It was more like, will people follow them? But, I thankfully, for the most part, people did, especially the early days when the parks reopened. And I went literally to the previews and to the opening days, just to, obviously to report, like to see what it was like and to get an idea of like how the rules, work and how people are following them and what that looks like and how different the parks are. And it was a different feeling. I mean, I've been going to the parks for a long time. And then I've been covering them for the last, few years. And it was just very different to go into the parks in the middle of the summer and they'd be nearly empty, and you can walk on an attraction. There's not like, hour-long waits for this in the middle of July and August when, those are really busy times. So yeah, it was an adjustment. It was very different, but it was interesting to see how it all like played out,
Yeah, and that was interesting for me too, because I had the same concerns as you, and just with what I see just around where I live and such, that some places everybody's so on it, and then other times you go somewhere and they're like, oh my gosh, get me out of here. And so, but then seeing the parks and looking at it and going, my gosh, wouldn't it be amazing to be there when it's so empty? But would I be able to relax? And, would I be nervous or would I be able to enjoy it? So it's all these mixed feelings about like, oh, I'd love to be there, but no, I wouldn't and everything. So I'm sure that had to be really interesting. Well, I would love to know too, we haven't really talked at all about your background and actually how you got interested even in becoming a journalist and doing kind of the job you do.
Well, it's interesting because I really didn't have any plans or ambitions to be a journalist. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I love movies. I'm a huge movie person and I wanted to be a filmmaker. But I couldn't go to film school, couldn't afford it. So when I went to university, freshman year, I just was like undecided. I was like, I'll figure out my major. I'll figure it out. I'll discover it. And one of the classes I took was a communications class. And part of that class was you could do like some extra like lab work at either the radio station on campus. There was a magazine that they had that you could, volunteer on. And then they had a student-run television station. And I thought, well, I like TV and sure, let me check it out. So I went and, they had the whole meeting and they were like, we'll teach you about all the equipment. You can run cameras. You can help produce shows. You can write scripts. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is perfect. But it was all underneath the communications journalism school. So I was like, well, if I, do this and I can take some other classes, I'll major in journalism, communications, it's fine. And I can do all this other stuff. So yeah, so I ended up majoring in journalism because I got involved with the the student-run TV station. And from there, I had to take, obviously, writing classes, journalism classes, reporting classes as part of my major. And so that's kind of where I then was like, oh, well, I can actually, do journalism. And so it kind of happened that way. It was just not expected at all. But, I ended up in a pretty cool place. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think of how many people, my background is in journalism too, and how many people like myself who are full-time jobs are not really, working as a reporter or something like that, just given the industry. And second, that you're able to do that is cool. And then second, that you're able to cover theme parks. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I would love to know too. I mean, what's your background with theme parks? I think you were involved with the Disney College program in some fashion, but kind of what is your background with, how much interested were you in theme parks before you started the job, I guess?
I mean, it's interesting. I think I kind of fall into things. Just, things sort of happen and I'm like, okay, this will work. When I was in college, had decided to major in journalism. And then there was this opportunity to do the Disney College program. And I love Disney. I've been going to Disney since I was a kid. And I was like, oh, I can move to Florida and work at Disney. Yeah. And so I did it. And I mean, I love Disney. So it was more like I love Disney World and not necessarily I was really interested in theme parks overall because I hadn't really been to Universal when I was a kid or SeaWorld or anything like that. But then having lived in Orlando and working at Disney and then you kind of in that environment, suddenly it was like, oh, let's go see what like Universal's doing and let's see what SeaWorld's doing. And then, so I did the college program and I loved it. And then went back to school, finished, my degree, and then was working. And then I got a chance to come back to Orlando, working for a TV station. And then I ended up getting a chance to work on the digital side, the website. And then was kind of like, let's start covering attractions more. And actually, and that sort of, it was like, well, you have an experience in that, and I like doing it, so you'll do it. And then, so then it just kind of happened. But since then, I mean, goodness, I've learned so much. I mean, just reading permits and learning terms and like following, coasters and all sorts of things, projects. And I've learned a lot and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, that's great. Well, yeah, I mean, being in Orlando and just seeing the way the industry's gone, I mean, just with, like we just talked about over the past 45 minutes or so, how many things are happening. I mean, it's definitely a field that is growing and expanding in a lot of ways. So, I mean, it sounds amazing doing this where you get to cover theme parks and everything. But what's kind of like, there have to be challenges with the job too. So what's something like about a part of the job or covering the parks that is like someone like me would not think about, like some sort of challenge that maybe we don't see when we read the stories?
Well, I mean, part of the challenge is keeping up with everything. Because like where, what I do, I'm the only one that does it, my station really, online. So, if you go to the website where I work, it's most of the articles, 99% of them are probably written by me, so, and I'm covering, Disney World, Universal, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, Legoland, the smaller attractions here in Orlando. So there's a lot to keep up with. And I have like just notebooks and dates written down and things I need to follow up on and things I need to check on and all of that. And I'm always on social media because you got to keep up with everything. So that's part of the challenge. Also, too, getting information correct and verifying things. I think, so easy, you see something and you run with it and that's not always the case. And so I think for me as like a pass holder is to see something and go, oh, that's so cool. Like, I can't wait. And the journalist in me is like, wait, let me make sure that that's actually what's happening. Let me make some calls. Let me check around and make sure that's actually happening. And then I can post it, because I try not to just run with things or over exaggerate or embellish. I have to like get things right. So that's that journalist part where it's like, that's the challenging part because, a lot of people are sharing things about what's going on in the parks and you see a picture and you think, oh, that's what it is. And you got to check to make sure it is what it is before you go with it. So there's like restraint. You got to make sure things are correct. And I don't know. I think, each job presents its own challenges. I always try to make the best of it. I try to, do my job correct, but also like have fun with it, and I think that's why I'm always so active on Twitter. It's like I try to keep people informed, but I also like to have fun with it too, especially, if you followed me, like I tend to engage, up to a point and, but also, be like, this is what it is correct. And this is what, this is what I know. This is what, is out there. So,
well, that's a big deal because, you have possibly certain sites that might throw rumors out there that aren't always accurate. So I'm sure it's a challenge, like you mentioned. That's a really good point about, okay, that sounds right, but yeah, you're not in the exact same world as, I'm not picking on any blog or site. I'm just saying it's a slightly different realm when you're doing it as a journalist.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I follow a lot of the blogs. I read a lot of the blogs. It's not a knock against them. It's just, I, as a journalist, can't post rumors, unless I have some kind of, it's some way to back it up, like to confirm it. I can't, do that. So it's always about like, how can I tell this story, but tell it in the most accurate way? Again, the theme park fan in me is like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing if this thing came or this new attraction opened. I don't know. Let me find out.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, before we finish, if you're good, I want to ask a few just kind of random, I wouldn't say rapid fire, but quicker questions to you about some things you're interested in. Some of them are
is it going to be timed?
Not timed. There's no buzzer. This is not trivia. This is just some kind of random questions. Some of them are kind of stupid, but that's, it's a fun way to end the show. Okay. So are you ready for this, Ashley?
Yes, I am. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So of these options, what is the best part about covering theme parks as a journalist? 1, attraction openings. 2, previewing new foods. Or 3, navigating Twitter. Which is the best part?
Attractions opening. Definitely.
Not Twitter?
No.
Oh, that was just a dumb question. But yeah, so openings are fun, right? They're pretty cool.
Yeah, they're definitely fun. It can be stressful sometimes because you got a lot going on, but yeah, definitely fun.
Cool. All right. Well, which of these Walt Disney World areas most needs an update, in your opinion? The Imagination Pavilion, Chester and Hester's Dino-Rama, which of course has the dead primeval whirl and Triceratops spin, or the Tomorrowland Speedway?
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, this rapid fire. Definitely Dinoland.
That is correct.
I know some people love that area, and I know the story behind it. I just don't like the roadside attraction thing. I don't know. You go from this very lush area and, like a jungle kind of thing to that, and I don't know. I personally don't like it. So if they could redo that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm with you. I even like the area by Dinosaur I like, because there's all the trees. And then you turn around the corner and you're like, whoa, oh, hold on. This is too much. Yeah. I can't take it. There's too much concrete. Okay, so this is more what you like here. What is an underrated Orlando destination that you think more people should visit or know about?
Underrated Orlando destination.
Could be anything.
You stumped me. Maybe downtown Orlando. Yeah, maybe downtown Orlando. Because I feel like, when I didn't live, it's changed now since the first time I lived in Orlando, but I think maybe downtown Orlando, just because there's so many different things there. Like you've got the Dr. Phillips Center, Performing Arts. And I think most people, when they come to Orlando, they just think theme parks and Disney World. And Disney World isn't even in Orlando. It's not technically in Orlando. So yeah, downtown Orlando.
I like it. That's perfect. That's a good answer. Okay. Hopefully this one will be a little easier. Which recent name that we have heard about for something new is less inspiring? The Creation Shop or the celebration of the Festival of the Lion King? Which name is not the best of the two?
The second one is a lot to say. Creation Shop, it's not really inspiring.
Yeah, I didn't want to just say which is bad, so I was like, less inspiring. That's a little nicer, but really,
Creation Shop. It's I don't know. You go from Mouse Gears to Creation Shop.
Yeah, it's makes me think I'm going to go in there and like create something. It's like an art shop.
a Build-A-Bear.
Yeah, something. It's like, nope, you're just going to buy a t-shirt. Okay, 2 more left. So we've mentioned a lot of upcoming attractions. Which one are you most excited about, of either ones we've talked about or something else?
VelociCoaster, definitely.
Yeah, that's hard not to say.
I mean, every time somebody posts a really cool picture of, I just like, I have stars in my eyes. Just like, can't wait for this ride to open. I'm so excited. I'm so ready. So yeah, definitely VelociCoaster.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I mean,
Yeah.
just the look of it, even beyond just the ride itself. I like it.
Yes.
Last question. What is your favorite all-time theme park attraction?
That still exists.
It doesn't have to exist anymore.
Okay.
All time. It could be any time. Just something you've experienced that is your favorite.
Okay, I'll give you two answers. First answer is Great Movie Ride. That was like my favorite attraction. And again, I've mentioned I love movies. I was going to be a filmmaker. So Hollywood Studios was like my park. And then you have Great Movie Ride. It was just like going through the movies. Yes. And I've seen all the movies that were in Great Movie Ride, but it's no longer with us. So my second favorite attraction is probably Tower of Terror, simply because that's where I worked when I was on my college program. It holds a very special place in my heart, and I love that attraction. I hope they don't do anything to it. So yeah, those are my two answers.
Wow. Those are great. I love Great Movie Ride. I mean, I went a lot growing up in late 80s, early 90s times. So I saw the MGM Studios with Great Movie Ride when it was starting out, and then Tower of Terror. And I love Tower of Terror. That's one of my favorites. So I have to ask you, though, before we finish, this is not rapid fire, but so did you have to like try to act scary or just be a little like when you were there? Because sometimes people really get into the character when they work at Tower of Terror. How much did you do of that?
I mean, I got into the character pretty much. I wasn't scary. They told us not to be scary. It's not supposed to be scary, more so like just kind of creepy. And, you know, what was great about that attraction is like, I'm not really, super outgoing. I'm better about it now than I used to be. So it was nice that I could kind of just be in the character and kind of, when I'd work in the library section of the attraction and the doors open and people walk into the library, you just kind of come in and, you kind of like give that sort of, and people are like, and you don't say anything else and people are like kind of nervous as they're walking in. It's great. You don't have to overact or anything. You just kind of be creepy and not talk a lot. And people are like sort of unsure what's going on. So it was great. I loved working there. It was great to get into. I'm not going to do it, but I used to be able to say the whole like library scene, like that plays on the TV in my sleep. And I used to be able to do the spiel at the elevators in English and in Spanish because I used to hear it all the time. I can't do it now, but